You're looking at a daguerreotype from October 15, 1865, taken at the Whitmore Brothers Photography Studio in Salem, Massachusetts. Two young men stand side by side, their faces captured with the sharp clarity that only silver-plated copper could provide. The brothers commissioned this portrait to commemorate their return from the war, their uniforms still bearing the dust of Virginia roads. But when the plate was developed 3 days later, something had gone impossibly wrong. The faces had switched positions on their bodies, not through any known photographic error, not through double exposure or chemical mishap. The left brother's face sat perfectly on the right brother's shoulders, and vice versa. The clothing, the posture, the hands remained exactly where they should be. Only the faces had migrated, as if they had simply walked across the image. Studio owner Ezekiel Whitmore wrote in his ledger that night, "The Lord has shown me something I was not meant to see." He sealed the plate in a lead-lined box and refused all payment. The daguerreotype would not surface again until 1923, when renovations of the old studio revealed Whitmore's hidden cache. By then, both brothers had been dead for 40 years, but according to the Danvers Hospital admission records, they had died on the same day in 1867, and according to those same records, they had been admitted under each other's names. The attending physician, Dr. Cornelius Hartwell, noted that each brother insisted he was the other. They spoke with each other's voices, knew each other's memories, answered to each other's wives. Dr. Hartwell's private journal, discovered in 1958, contained a single entry about the case. "I have witnessed an exchange that defies every principle of medicine and nature. The soul, it seems, is not as firmly anchored to the flesh as we believed. What you're about to hear challenges everything we understand about identity, consciousness, and the permanence of self. The evidence suggests that something began in that photography studio, something that didn't end when the shutter clicked, something that may still be happening today in ways we're only beginning to discover." The case files were sealed by the Massachusetts Medical Board in 1868. They remain sealed to this day. But the photographs remember everything. And they're still teaching us things we're not ready to learn. The year 1865 marked the dawn of commercial photography in New England's smaller cities. The daguerreotype process, perfected by Louis Daguerre himself, required subjects to remain motionless for up to 8 minutes. Silver-plated copper sheets were exposed to iodine vapors, then mercury, creating images of unprecedented detail and permanence. But the process was temperamental, sensitive to atmospheric pressure, humidity, and what photographers called spiritual interference. The Whitmore Brothers studio occupied the second floor of a federal-style brick building on Chestnut Street. Ezekiel and his younger brother Moses had learned the trade from a traveling photographer who had worked with Matthew Brady during the war. Their equipment included a Voigtlander Petzval lens and a custom-built camera box of their own design. The studio's north-facing windows provided consistent light, essential for the long exposure times. Salem, in 1865, was a city rebuilding itself after losing nearly 300 sons to the war. The textile mills along the North River ran day and night, weaving cloth for a nation stitching itself back together. Horse-drawn omnibuses carried visitors between the train depot and the growing photography studios. Most families commissioned portraits to commemorate their returning soldiers or to memorialize their dead. The Blackwood brothers, Thomas and Samuel, had served in the 23rd Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. They had survived Antietam, Fredericksburg, and the Siege of Petersburg. Their unit records, preserved in the Massachusetts State Archives, show both men listed as present for duty through Lee's surrender. They returned to Salem on October 10, 1865, aboard the afternoon train from Boston. The parish register at First Church shows both brothers in attendance for Sunday service on October 14th. Reverend Josiah Crane noted in his weekly correspondence that the brothers seemed altered by their experiences, speaking little and watching each other with uncommon intensity. The appointment ledger at Whitmore Brothers Photography shows their sitting scheduled for 2 p.m. on October 15th. Standard rate: $2 for a full plate, $1 for each additional print. The weather that day was recorded as overcast with intermittent rain showers, atmospheric conditions that, according to photographic manuals of the era, should have made any exposure impossible. Yet somehow an image was captured, an image that would defy explanation for the next 60 years. The Whitmore brothers' business records, maintained with Methodist precision, show no other appointments that week produced unusual results. But the Blackwood sitting would be their last. At precisely 2:17 p.m. on October 15th, Thomas and Samuel Blackwood arrived at the Whitmore studio. Ezekiel's preparation notes, written in brown ink on foolscap paper, describe the brothers as cordial but distant, as if viewing each other across a great chasm. The standard daguerreotype setup required subjects to position themselves against a painted backdrop depicting a library interior. A metal headrest, adjustable for height, would keep their heads steady during the 8-minute exposure. Samuel, the elder brother, stood on the left. Thomas positioned himself on the right, their hands resting on a shared book prop. Moses Whitmore operated the camera while Ezekiel managed the chemical bath and timing. The first unusual observation occurred at 2:23 p.m., when Ezekiel noted that his mercury thermometer read 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the heated studio on an October afternoon, with no windows open. The second anomaly appeared during the exposure itself. Moses later wrote to his cousin in Providence. The brothers' shadows fell in opposite directions, though lit by the same north window. At 2:31 p.m., exactly 8 minutes after the shutter opened, Ezekiel removed the exposed plate. The standard development process required immersion in a heated mercury bath, then fixing with a sodium thiosulfate solution. As the image emerged in the developer, Ezekiel observed what he initially dismissed as an optical illusion. The faces appeared to be sliding slowly across the silver surface like oil on water. He blinked, refocused, and looked again. The migration had stopped, but the faces now occupied the wrong bodies. Thomas's weathered features sat atop Samuel's broader shoulders. Samuel's distinctive cleft chin appeared below Thomas's narrower forehead. Every other detail, clothing, hands, posture, remained exactly as positioned during the sitting. Ezekiel called his brother to witness the impossible result. Moses examined the plate under the studio's strongest magnifying lens, searching for signs of double exposure or chemical contamination. He found none. The image was sharp, properly exposed, and chemically stable, but it depicted something that had never existed in the physical world. The brothers themselves seemed unaware of anything unusual when they concluded the session. They paid their fee, scheduled a return visit to collect their prints, and departed at 2:45 p.m. Witnesses on Chestnut Street later reported seeing two men walking toward Federal Street, engaged in quiet but heated conversation. They appeared to be arguing about something each claimed to know better than the other. Dr. Cornelius Hartwell received his medical degree from Harvard in 1842 and had served as chief physician at Danvers State Hospital since 1859. His expertise in disorders of the mind had earned recognition from the Massachusetts Medical Society. The hospital's admission records for October 18, 1865, show two emergency cases brought by the Salem Constabulary. Both men claimed to be someone they clearly were not. The first patient, bearing Thomas Blackwood's identification papers, insisted his name was Samuel and demanded to see his wife, Martha. The second patient, carrying Samuel's effects, responded only to the name Thomas and spoke of his engagement to Miss Catherine Mills. Dr. Hartwell's initial examination notes, preserved in the hospital's medical archives, describe the phenomenon as complete psychological transposition. Each man possessed the other's memories, mannerisms, and intimate knowledge of personal relationships. Thomas's body spoke with Samuel's distinctive stutter and recalled details of Samuel's childhood scarlet fever. Samuel's physical form exhibited Thomas's habit of rubbing his left temple when concentrating. On October 19th, both wives arrived to claim their husbands. Martha Blackwood approached the man in Samuel's body and immediately declared, "This is not my husband." Catherine Mills examined the man in Thomas's body and reached the same conclusion. Yet both men knew private details that only their claimed identities could possess. The man in Thomas's body recalled the location of Samuel and Martha's hidden savings, $73 buried beneath the oak tree behind their cottage. The man in Samuel's body described Thomas's proposal to Catherine, including words spoken when they were entirely alone. Dr. Hartwell administered a series of cognitive examinations developed by his colleague, Professor Marcus Thorne of the Boston Institute for Mental Sciences. The results, recorded in cipher to protect patient confidentiality, showed perfect retention of swapped memories with no recollection of their original identities. On October 20th, Martha Blackwood brought a daguerreotype of her wedding day to the hospital. She placed it before both patients and asked them to identify the groom. The man in Samuel's body pointed to Samuel's image and said, "That is me on my wedding day." The man in Thomas's body studied the photograph and declared, "I have never seen this person before." Yet Thomas had served as best man at that very wedding. Dr. Hartwell's private correspondence with Professor Thorne, dated October 22nd, contains his most disturbing observation. The transposition appears to be deepening rather than resolving. Each day, they become more convincingly the person they claim to be. I begin to suspect we are witnessing not madness, but something far more troubling. Something that challenges the very nature of human identity. Professor Marcus Thorne arrived at Danvers State Hospital on October 24th, carrying his collection of phrenological instruments and a newly acquired ophthalmoscope from Germany. His examination of the Blackwood brothers would be documented in the Proceedings of the Boston Institute for Mental Sciences, Volume 12, published in 1866. Thorne's first test involved detailed cranial measurements using brass calipers calibrated to 1/16 of an inch. The skull dimensions, recorded in his leather-bound notebook, matched each patient's physical body perfectly. Yet when Thorne administered his standard memory association tests, the results defied every principle of mental science. The man in Thomas's body could recite Samuel's childhood lessons at the Salem Grammar School, including the exact wording of a poem Samuel had memorized at age 7. The man in Samuel's body recalled Thomas's apprenticeship under the blacksmith Jonas Fletcher, describing tools and techniques Thomas had learned in private sessions. Dr. Hartwell observed these examinations from behind a one-way mirror installed for training purposes. His notes described Thorne's growing agitation as each test produced impossible results. On October 25th, Thorne requested permission to photograph the patients using a portable daguerreotype apparatus. The hospital's administrator, believing documentation might aid future cases, granted approval. Thorne positioned his camera in the hospital's east-facing consultation room, where morning light provided adequate illumination. The first exposure, taken at 9:15 a.m., showed both patients seated in wooden chairs 6 feet apart. When developed in the hospital's makeshift darkroom, the image revealed an anomaly identical to the original Whitmore brothers photograph. The faces had switched positions again. Thorne immediately exposed a second plate, this time positioning himself between the patients to prevent any possible confusion. The second image showed the same impossible transposition. Dr. Hartwell's journal entry for that evening contains a single paragraph written in Latin, a language he reserved for his most confidential observations. Translated, it reads, "We are documenting not a disease of the mind, but a phenomenon that operates beyond the physical laws governing human existence." Professor Thorne departed Danvers that afternoon, taking his photographic plates with him. His final report to the Massachusetts Medical Board, dated November 1st, 1865, recommended immediate transfer of both patients to a secure facility. The report's conclusion, stamped confidential and sealed with red wax, stated simply, "Continued observation poses risks to staff and institution." Within hours of Thorne's departure, both patients began exhibiting what Dr. Hartwell termed accelerated identity decay. They stopped responding to their claimed names. They ceased recognizing their wives when visited. By October 27th, both men had entered a catatonic state, staring at each other across the ward with expressions of profound recognition and terror. They seemed to be remembering something they desperately wished to forget. The transfer orders came through on November 2nd, signed by State Medical Supervisor Dr. Elias Crane and countersigned by the governor's office. Both patients would be relocated to the McLean Asylum for the Insane in Somerville, where specialized facilities existed for cases of unusual psychological complexity. The transport manifest, preserved in the Massachusetts State Archives, lists the departure time as 6 a.m. aboard a specially chartered railway car. Dr. Hartwell accompanied the patients, along with 2 orderlies and a medical attendant trained in restraint procedures. The journey from Salem to Somerville typically required 2 hours by rail. On November 2nd, 1865, the train never arrived at its destination. Railway authorities received the first inquiry at 10:30 a.m. when McLean Asylum reported the overdue transfer. A search engine dispatched from Boston located the chartered car at 11:45 a.m., stopped on a siding near Medford. The locomotive engineer, Patrick McGillicuddy, was found unconscious in his cab, with no memory of the preceding 4 hours. The railway car stood empty except for Dr. Hartwell's medical bag and a single sheet of paper bearing his handwriting. The note, written in pencil on hospital stationery, contained 5 words. "They have gone back home." McGillicuddy's statement to railway investigators, recorded November 3rd, described the last thing he remembered before losing consciousness. The 2 patients began speaking in unison around mile marker 47, saying the same words at exactly the same moment. Not talking to each other, mind you, but reciting something like a prayer or an incantation. The words weren't in English, and they weren't in any language I've heard before. A search of the surrounding countryside continued for 6 days, involving local constabulary and volunteers from 3 townships. No trace of Dr. Hartwell or the patients was discovered. The investigation officially closed on November 9th with all 3 men listed as missing persons. However, Salem city records show that Thomas and Samuel Blackwood both died on November 2nd, 1865. The death certificates, filed by City Clerk Nathaniel Morse, list the cause as simultaneous cardiac failure and the time as 7:22 a.m. Both men were reportedly found in their respective homes by their wives, despite having been in custody 50 miles away. The bodies were interred in Harmony Grove Cemetery on November 5th, in adjacent plots purchased by their families. Dr. Hartwell's fate remained unknown until December 1865, when his body was discovered in the basement of the abandoned Whitmore Brothers photography studio. He had apparently been dead for several weeks, though the advanced state of decomposition made precise determination impossible. Clutched in his right hand was a daguerreotype plate showing 3 figures, himself and both Blackwood brothers. In the image, all 3 men appeared to be screaming. But daguerreotypes, as any photographer knows, cannot capture sound. The investigation into Dr. Hartwell's death was conducted by Detective Inspector William Ashford of the Massachusetts State Police. Ashford's case files, unsealed in 1965 under the Freedom of Information Act, reveal evidence that challenged conventional understanding of the timeline. The basement of the Whitmore studio had been sealed since October 15th, the day of the original photograph. City building inspector records confirm that both Whitmore brothers had abandoned the premises immediately after the Blackwood session. Neighbors reported seeing the brothers loading equipment onto a wagon at dawn on October 16th, departing Salem without forwarding addresses. Yet Ashford's examination of the basement revealed signs of recent occupancy. Fresh candle wax, recently consumed food supplies, and a makeshift darkroom suggested someone had been living there for weeks. The most disturbing discovery was a collection of 47 additional daguerreotype plates, all depicting variations of the same 3 figures. Each image showed Dr. Hartwell and the Blackwood brothers in different poses, different clothing, different settings. Some appeared to be taken outdoors, others in unfamiliar interior spaces. None corresponded to any known location in Salem or the surrounding area. Professor Heinrich Zimmermann of the Boston Photographic Society examined the plates using spectroscopic analysis techniques developed in Germany. His report, dated January 15, 1866, confirmed that all images were genuine daguerreotypes, chemically consistent with the silver-mercury process. However, Zimmermann noted temporal inconsistencies in the photographic evidence. Several plates showed foliage and lighting conditions consistent with summer months, though all had been created during late autumn. One image depicted snow-covered ground beneath the subject's feet, despite Massachusetts experiencing an unusually mild winter. Zimmermann's most significant finding concerned the subject's aging patterns across the 47 photographs. The images appeared to document the 3 men aging rapidly and simultaneously, sometimes by years between sequential plates. In the final photographs of the series, all 3 subjects appeared decades older than their known ages. Dr. Hartwell, who had been 43 at the time of his disappearance, appeared ancient in the last images. The Blackwood brothers, both in their 20s when last seen alive, showed the deep lines and stooped posture of elderly men. Detective Inspector Ashford's final report, submitted to the State Attorney General on February 2, 1866, recommended the case be classified as death by unknown causes. He made no mention of the photographic evidence in his official findings. A handwritten addendum, discovered attached to the back of the file folder, contained Ashford's private assessment. The evidence suggests these men experienced the passage of many years in a matter of weeks. I can offer no rational explanation for this phenomenon. I recommend the entire matter be sealed from public knowledge. Some discoveries are too dangerous for general circulation. The Massachusetts Medical Board convened a closed hearing on March 15, 1866, to review all evidence related to the Blackwood case. The seven-member panel included the state's most distinguished physicians, alienists, and legal experts. Dr. Solomon Hayes, chairman of the board, presided over 3 days of testimony from witnesses, investigators, and scientific consultants. The complete transcript of these proceedings remains classified, but the board's final resolution has been preserved. Motion 1866-047 ordered the immediate destruction of all photographic evidence related to the case. Motion 1866-048 prohibited any medical professional from discussing the matter publicly under threat of license revocation. Motion 1866-049 established a permanent seal on all related documents, renewable every 50 years by unanimous vote. However, Professor Zimmerman had retained detailed sketches of the daguerreotype plates before their ordered destruction. These drawings, hidden in his private laboratory at the Boston Photographic Society, would remain undiscovered until 1923. The Whitmore Brothers studio building was purchased by the city of Salem in April 1866 and converted into municipal offices. Workers renovating the basement reported persistent problems with photographic equipment malfunctioning in the space. 3 different photography studios attempted to establish businesses in the building between 1867 and 1875. Each closed within months, citing technical difficulties and atmospheric irregularities that rendered image capture impossible. The building was eventually converted to residential apartments, but tenants complained of strange phenomena. Multiple residents reported seeing figures moving through rooms that were known to be empty. Several families described finding daguerreotype plates hidden behind walls during renovations, always depicting the same 3 unknown men. City records show an unusually high turnover rate in the building, with most tenants vacating within 6 months of occupancy. By 1890, the building stood empty and was eventually condemned by the Salem Board of Health. The official reason cited structural instability, though engineering surveys found no evidence of foundation problems. In 1895, the building was demolished and the lot remained vacant for the next 28 years. Local children reported that photographs taken near the empty lot would develop with extra figures visible in the background. Parents began avoiding the area when taking family portraits, leading to the site being locally known as the Cursed Ground. Salem City planning documents from 1920 show multiple proposals for redevelopment, all mysteriously withdrawn before construction began. The lot remained empty until 1923, when renovation of an adjacent building led to the rediscovery of the Whitmore brothers' sealed cache. Among the preserved daguerreotype plates was one final image that had never been catalogued in the original investigation. It showed a much larger group of people, all with their faces in the wrong places. The rediscovery occurred on June 14, 1923, when contractor Henry Polk was excavating the foundation of the adjacent Merchants Bank building. Polk's crew unearthed a lead-lined strongbox buried 3 feet beneath what had been the Whitmore studio's rear wall. Inside, wrapped in oiled canvas, were 73 additional daguerreotype plates and a leather journal bound with copper wire. The journal belonged to Ezekiel Whitmore and contained entries dating from October 1865 through February 1866. Dr. Margaret Thornfield, recently appointed as Salem's first municipal archivist, was summoned to examine the discovery. Thornfield held a doctorate in American history from Radcliffe College and had specialized in 19th-century photographic documentation. Her preliminary examination, conducted in the basement of Salem City Hall, revealed that Whitmore's journal described a phenomenon far more extensive than previously documented. According to his entries, the face-swapping effect had begun appearing in other photographs throughout Essex County. Studios in Beverly, Marblehead, and Gloucester reported similar anomalies between October 1865 and March 1866. Whitmore had been secretly corresponding with these photographers, documenting a total of 312 confirmed cases. The journal's most disturbing entries described Whitmore's theory about the cause of the phenomenon. He believed the Blackwood brothers had somehow opened a door during their sitting, allowing what he termed identity displacement to spread like a contagion. Entry dated November 30, 1865. The effect grows stronger with each passing week. Today, Mrs. Cornelius brought her family portrait to complain that her infant daughter's face appears on her husband's shoulders. Entry dated December 15, 1865. I have burned 17 plates this week alone. The displacement now occurs even in daguerreotypes taken before October 15th. The past itself seems to be reshaping. Dr. Thornfield's scientific training led her to dismiss Whitmore's supernatural explanations, but the photographic evidence proved more challenging to rationalize. The newly discovered plates showed the phenomenon affecting dozens of Salem families throughout the winter of 1865 to 1866. Children appeared with their grandparents' faces, husbands with their wives' features, siblings with the faces of deceased relatives. Most unsettling were the plates showing faces that belonged to no known person. These unknown visages appeared on familiar bodies, creating portraits of people who had never existed. Thornfield documented her findings in a report submitted to the Massachusetts Historical Society on July 2, 1923. Her recommendation was immediate public disclosure and scholarly investigation. The Historical Society's response, received July 5th, consisted of a single sentence. The matter you have described falls outside our area of interest. Within a week, Thornfield received similar rejections from Harvard University, the Boston Museum of Science, and the American Photographic Association. On July 15th, two men in dark suits visited Thornfield's office, identifying themselves as representatives of a federal historical preservation agency. They confiscated all photographic materials related to the discovery, along with Thornfield's research notes and correspondence. The last entry in Thornfield's personal diary reads simply, "They say some history is too dangerous to preserve." Dr. Thornfield's disappearance on July 20, 1923, was reported to Salem police by her landlady, Mrs. Adelaide Foster. Thornfield had failed to return to her boarding house on Chestnut Street for 3 consecutive nights. Her office at City Hall showed no signs of disturbance, but all materials related to the Whitmore discovery had been removed. Detective Lieutenant James Morrison conducted the missing person investigation with assistance from state authorities. Morrison's case notes, preserved in the Salem Police Department archives, described the investigation as impeded by federal intervention. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Thornfield enter a black automobile with government plates on the afternoon of July 17th. The vehicle was observed heading toward Boston, but Massachusetts State Police found no record of its registration. Morrison's attempts to contact the federal agents who had visited Thornfield's office were met with denials that such agents existed. No government agency acknowledged having personnel in Salem during the relevant time period. The investigation officially concluded on August 15, 1923, with Thornfield listed as a missing person. However, Morrison's private notes, discovered after his death in 1954, reveal his continued unofficial investigation. He had located 3 other historians who had attempted to research similar photographic anomalies in Massachusetts. All 3 had disappeared under mysterious circumstances between 1895 and 1920. Professor Edmund Clark of Williams College vanished in 1895 while studying temporal displacement in early photography. Dr. Ruth Blackwell of Smith College disappeared in 1908 during research into identity transference phenomena. Librarian Thomas Hartwell, grandson of the Dr. Hartwell from the original case, went missing in 1920 while cataloging his grandfather's papers. Morrison's investigation revealed a pattern. Researchers who delved too deeply into these photographic anomalies consistently vanished. Their work was systematically confiscated, their findings suppressed, their very existence eventually questioned. By 1925, Morrison had documented 11 such disappearances spanning 30 years. His final note, dated September 1925, expressed his intention to cease the investigation. I have come to understand that some knowledge carries a price too high to pay. The phenomenon continues, but those who study it do not survive to report their findings. I am destroying my notes and advising others to avoid this area of research. Morrison lived until 1954, never again investigating cases involving photographic anomalies. His nephew donated the detective's private papers to the Salem Historical Society upon his death. The papers were cataloged and filed in the Society's archives, where they remained undisturbed for 40 years. In 1994, graduate student Patricia Vance discovered Morrison's notes while researching unresolved missing person cases for her master's thesis. Her thesis advisor immediately recommended she choose a different topic. Patricia Vance's initial research began as part of her criminology degree at Northeastern University in Boston. Her thesis proposal, submitted in September 1994, focused on patterns in unsolved disappearances in Massachusetts between 1865 and 1925. Vance had identified 23 cases involving researchers, historians, and academics who had vanished while investigating what she termed anomalous photographic phenomena. Her faculty advisor, Professor Daniel Reeves, initially approved the research project with enthusiasm. However, after Vance's preliminary findings were submitted in November 1994, Reeves abruptly withdrew his support. University records show that Reeves recommended Vance pursue a more conventional topic with better documented source material. Vance continued her research independently, using her student access to university libraries and archives throughout New England. Her investigation led her to the basement archives of the Massachusetts Historical Society, where she discovered a misfiled collection of photographs. The collection, catalogued simply as anonymous daguerreotypes, circa 1860 to 1870, contained 127 plates showing the same facial displacement phenomenon. Each photograph depicted different subjects, but all shared the characteristic feature of faces appearing on incorrect bodies. Vance's analysis revealed that the photographs originated from studios across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. The geographic distribution suggested the phenomenon had spread throughout southern New England during the 1860s. Most significantly, Vance found evidence that the effect was still occurring. Contemporary police reports from the 1980s and early 1990s described numerous cases of photographic identity confusion. Modern instant cameras, digital cameras, and even security surveillance systems occasionally captured images showing similar facial displacements. The Massachusetts State Police had quietly established a special unit in 1987 to investigate such reports. Unit designation SF7 handled approximately 15 cases per year involving technological anomalies in image capture. Vance contacted Lieutenant Sarah Chen, SF7's commanding officer, requesting information about current investigations. Chen's response, received in January 1995, was notably brief. "The unit you reference does not exist within our organizational structure." However, Vance had obtained Chen's name and unit designation from official police department directories published in 1994. When Vance attempted to verify Chen's denial by contacting the state police directly, she was told no such officer had ever been employed by the department. On February 14, 1995, Vance received an unexpected phone call from someone claiming to be Dr. Margaret Thornfield. The caller, speaking in a voice weakened by age, claimed to be 127 years old and living under federal protection. According to the caller, she and other researchers had been relocated to a secure facility where they continued studying the phenomenon under government supervision. The caller's final words before disconnecting were, "Stop looking before you join us here." Patricia Vance's research ended abruptly on February 28, 1995, when she failed to appear for her scheduled thesis defense. Her apartment near Northeastern University showed no signs of struggle or hasty departure. Personal belongings remained undisturbed, but all materials related to her photographic anomaly research had been removed. University officials found a typed letter on Vance's desk, dated February 27, stating her intention to withdraw from the graduate program. The letter cited personal reasons and requested that all academic records be sealed permanently. However, Vance's roommate, Jennifer Walsh, insisted the letter was not in Vance's handwriting or typing style. Walsh had secretly photocopied several pages from Vance's research notes 2 weeks before the disappearance. These copies, hidden in Walsh's personal effects, were discovered in 2019 when Walsh's estate was settled after her death. The photocopied pages contained Vance's final conclusions about the photographic phenomenon. According to her analysis, the face-swapping effect represented what she termed identity bleeding between parallel versions of reality. Vance theorized that certain photographic processes could capture images from multiple timelines simultaneously. The daguerreotype's unique chemical properties made it particularly susceptible to this cross-dimensional interference. Modern digital photography occasionally experienced similar effects when electromagnetic conditions created temporal static. Vance's most disturbing discovery was documented in her final research note, dated February 26, 1995. She had located a contemporary photograph showing herself with a different face, one belonging to Dr. Margaret Thornfield. The photograph was taken by a tourist at Salem's Harmony Grove Cemetery, where Vance had been photographing the Blackwood brothers' headstones. In the image, Vance's body stood beside the graves, but Thornfield's aged features looked back at the camera. According to Vance's note, she had no memory of being photographed that day. More troubling still, the timestamp on the photograph showed it was taken 3 days before Vance had actually visited the cemetery. Today, the Patricia Vance Research Collection is housed in the Restricted Documents Division of the Boston Public Library. Access requires special permission and federal security clearance. The collection contains photocopies of historical documents related to photographic anomalies dating from 1865 to 1995. Digital scans of the materials are prohibited, and all researchers must sign confidentiality agreements before viewing the files. In 2019, cybersecurity experts at MIT reported that digital photographs taken near Salem's Harmony Grove Cemetery occasionally display rendering errors affecting facial recognition software. The errors occur most frequently in images captured on October 15th, regardless of the year. These modern incidents suggest that whatever began in 1865 continues to influence photographic technology today. The phenomenon has evolved with advancing technology, adapting to new methods of image capture while maintaining its fundamental properties. Perhaps most unsettling is the possibility that our own photographs may be documenting versions of ourselves from other timelines. Every image we create might be capturing not who we are, but who we might have been. If cases like this fascinate you, subscribe and turn on notifications for the next file. Disclaimer: this script is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, institutions, and incidents are invented or used fictitiously. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental, created solely for entertainment.